Hello and good morning, everybody. Hope you're having a great day. We have episode 11 of the Malazan read through book club today, and we are starting Memories of Ice in this section. So we read the two prologues and the first sub book. Talk about it, go through it, and I'll just give you my opinion, my positives and negatives, and we'll see how it goes. I like just to preface before going in. I do like sort of what happened this section and where it's go and where it's going. Sorry, my voice is cracking up for some reason. I like what was happening, where it's going, what section we're in. There's only really one plot that I didn't really feel for or I didn't really care for the most part. But by the end of that plot, it I had a connection to it, and I'm like, okay, I see where this is going. But other than that, pretty solid for a start. I wanted to keep reading. I didn't really have any issues with continuing reading, and so it was a good start. Good morning, Mr. Dad. Good morning, Daniel. Um, yeah, so I was just saying that good positive reading for this first section here. Only one plot I didn't really like care for the most part, which was like the Gruntle one. Until the end, I really liked it, but the beginning of it, I'm like, what are we doing here? Sort of. But I see where it was going with it, and I like where it ended. But yeah, really good start to the first sub book of Malazan Memories of Ice. And so, one second here. Sorry, I got a wild cat trying to cause havoc. Yeah, don't meow at me. Sorry about that. You always gotta bother me whenever I'm filming, of course. One second, I'll be right back. Okay, sorry about that. Phil, that cat, he always has to bother me like right when I'm filming. He knows exactly when it's happening. Yeah, we'll get more into it, but it took me a while to start liking that plot line. Yeah, I agree too. I don't know. It took me a while just to get like who the characters were with that plot line as well. But I started liking it like towards the last chapter where it got to it, but we'll definitely get into it. Um, but yeah, let's just start off with all the confusion and like what's going on with the prologue, because I mean, what better way to start a book than than all this like intrigue and everything that they usually throw in with Malazan, and I'm just like, what's happening here in the prologue whenever it happens, but it wasn't that confusing. I kind of got like the hang of it in this one. Um, with that, so we start off at my ethik. I'm gonna pronounce this wrong. My ethiki Inn, um, which is Program of the Rotted Flower and 33rd Jaghoot War, 298,665 years before Burned Sleep. So we're going way back. We're going to the beginning, basically, with this. So we basically start out with this dude named Pranchol, and he's overlooking the landscape, which is almost like an ice age, memories of ice. And he is overlooking it, and then a person named Canig Toll approaches him, and the two discuss the Jaghoot and the current state that the Jaghoot are in, and everything going on. And eventually, Pranchol says that the group are pursuing another group that's weak already. So it's a group of Jaghoot, as we learn. And then Canig says that he will camp and prepare to attack the next day. And Pranchol then detects a bone hunter that's alone in the distance. Um, and then I said, like in my notes, I'm like, are these the people who were the Talani Moss before they got immortality? And it turns out they were. So they're like hunting down the Jaghoot basically. And these are the only three Jaghoot left on Earth: the mother and then the two children. Um, Let me just check the chat. I will just say that the precise date given is a meta narrative thing. That means that is meant to seem ridiculous. My favorite prologue of the series. So much world building just dropped on you. Yeah, it might be my favorite prologue as well. Deadhouse Gates had a really good one just for like the atmosphere and the things going on. But this one was pretty crazy too. Okay. And so after that section, basically we cut to the weak group that they're hunting down, which is the Jackhoot mother and her children. And we learn that she's being hunted by the Emos, and that the Emos bonecaster that was sensed by Pranchol shows up, and then the Jaghoot tells her to put her out of her misery instead of just like playing with her essentially and like just kill her on the spot. Um, and the the Emos offer a bargain to her, so the Jaghoot nods and accepts the bargain. The bargain, we don't know what the bargain is as of yet. Um, Another interesting thing as well is she said that like the Emos and the Jaghoot were killed so that they could like chain raced, and now they're just being like murdered because of it. I didn't understand it fully. Yeah, we met Pranch Hole in Gardens of the Moon. He was the Talani Moss in Krup's dream. Probably fourth favorite prologue. Okay. Yeah, I remember meeting him for like a second. He was in it. Like this whole atmosphere or the world that we're in right now, I'm assuming is like the same as the one that we were in when Krupp was like there when Silver Fox was being born. That's kind of like what I was going off in my head, at least. Um, but and they basically these Jackhood are being hunted, and we're just getting a bunch of like lore at the moment, and I'm just like, it's a bit overwhelming at the time, but it all pieces together as we go through. So we also get introduced to the Omtos Falak Warren, sort of, which was mentioned during Ikram's parts in Deadhouse Gates as well, I believe. So we get a tie back to that and a connection. And then the Bonecaster bargain we learned was actually to have the Bonecaster take the two children. So she takes them and she goes to the Omtos Felek Warren, and it's one boy and one girl child. And she's now going to send them in, and they may die, but it's their only chance. I was like, what is she sending them into at first? And then I think later it's explained that what she's sending them into is like an actual wound in the Warren. She's trying to heal it, sort of like how the Talani Moss healed the wound in the Warren where the Solanda was found. That's the way I like kind of saw it. Um, but after oh yeah, and I think I wrote in my like my notes here on the side. I was like, um, crazy prediction. What if like Ikarum is like Ikaram's father is like the child or something like that? But I don't think that's true anymore because if they went to be used to heal the Warren, they'd probably be like captured or captive forever inside the Warren, unless it's Ikarum and he broke out or something like that. I don't know, one of those things. The title of the book very much becomes motifs from the Memories of Ice onwards and will get explored in all the different meanings in the book. Yeah, I could see that. Like we have like the Cripple God is one of them and everything. I think it's the last book. And he finally makes an appearance. But yeah, after this section where we see that the Bonecaster has taken the two children, Pranchol and the Emos catch up with the mother. They question her where the children have gone. She tells them that they gone to ending the 33rd Jaghoot War because she's the last one. And so they just straight up like kill her after they get the information they need. Um, and so these two kids are like the last of the Jaghoot, I believe, at least in this like continent. And then Pranchol then heads for a place called Morn, which is where the Bonecaster took the children, was Morn, to encounter the female Bonecaster who did this. And then we then cut to Kalava, which we learn is the Bonecaster, the female. And we learn that she is the sister of Tool, which is pretty interesting. And this is all before the immortality and everything, as we learn. So Pranchol confronts her. He basically says that she's using the children's soul to heal the wound in the Warren, similar, like I said, to what happened with the Talani Moss in the Warren where they found the Solanda. And basically the two of them continue talking, and then Prantrol tells her that the Emos are becoming immortal. However, she does not want to become immortal, but the rest of them do. So, a lot there. I don't know who the children are, what they're doing. Like, in my like theory crafting when I was first reading it, I'm like, oh, maybe it's like Ikarum. But then like, who's the girl Jaghoot? We haven't really seen a girl Jaghoot either, um, as of yet until this prologue. So let's see what happens with that. And we see Race shows up later, and he's like captured. He's like pacified after he was captured by the Azeth. Which makes me believe I was like, oh, maybe it's not that bad of a thing if Ikarum got captured by the Azef if he got pacified as well. And also, why is there like a there's like a Jaghoot in each dead house? I guess now that I'm thinking about it, you have Raced is the one in the dead house in Daru, and then you have Ikram's father is the one in the dead house in what is it, the Seven Cities? And then Ikarum is supposed to be the one in the Whirlwind. So is there supposed to be like a Jaghoot for each dead house? I'm just barely like connecting that right now. Um, yeah, let's see. This area of the world. Yeah, Morn is south again, Bacchus. Yeah, this is ancient Conchain Shamal, city of Morn. Kalava is Tool Sisters too, who slaughtered and betrayed their clan. Yeah, they mentioned that as well. Like Kalava, they're like, you killed all your kin and everything. I'm like, what's the story there? Like, why did you do it? I don't know if we'll get that later at some point, but pretty interesting. I didn't know Tool had a sister in general. And then also, like, did she not take in immortality when Tool does take immortality? Like, what's gonna happen there exactly? But a lot of just like intrigue. And I think the next prologue actually is like probably the more interesting one, or it's easier to understand. But this one was like a lot of stuff being placed, and it's just like, okay, what's happening exactly? But basically, it sounds like there was a wound in the Warren, and it was healed by using these children, who we don't know who the children are as of yet, which is pretty torturous. I think there's even a quote, um, like that's mentioned. Let me see if I wrote it down, because they're like talking about like death and everything, or putting the children to death, and I think the Bonecaster lady actually mentions, she's like, oh yeah, it's at the bottom of page 5. Let me just read it real quick. Or bottom of page 6, before the change in the section. She's like bringing the children in the wound, and she's like, um, it's when she's like putting them in. So she's like, she would let them sleep a little longer, then she would send them through the gate. A word to the boy: take care of your sister. The journey will not be long. And to them both, your mother waits beyond. A lie. But they would need courage. If she cannot find you, then one of her kin will. Go then to safety, to salvation. After all, what could be worse than death? Um, what's worse than death is probably being tortured forever for the rest of your life and for the rest of existence because you're being used to heal a wound. So, what you did to them might be worse than death. I don't know, maybe just a little. Uh, yeah, she didn't do the ritual. Most of the ancient events don't make full sense until you finish the series. Yeah, I figured it's something like that with them not making sense. So I'm just like going along with it, but I'm piecing together what I can. I think the second prologue made more sense though, which we'll get into right now. Um, so for the second prologue, we're on the continent of Corelli. I'm pronouncing that wrong. Corelli. Um, and for the years, it's just like, okay, it's the time of dying, 119,736,000 years before Burn's sleep. It's 3 years after the fall of the cripple god, is what I noticed it said in there. So the world is broken, and Cruel is basically looking over the world, why it's destroyed, what's going on, and he's wondering and watching while men are like just killing each other, and the whole world has just been destroyed. We learn why a little later. So in the next section, we get introduced to Cruel's sister, who they don't really give a name for, Draconis, um, who is the brother to Cruel, and then there's like a few other things as well. Um, so we learn that the continent's basically been incinerated, and Cruel is just viewing the carnage. Cruel speaks with his brother and his sister about confronting Calor, who is the one who did all of this and destroyed the land. So they go to confront him, and because of his what he did, they curse him. And basically, the curse is he is an immortal, but he can never ascend. So he's always going to stay like weak in a sense, or like have mortal issues, mortal sickness and weakness, but he's never going to ascend. So he's going to have to struggle through the ills of mortality without having the ability to die. And so they basically blocked his path to ascendancy as well. And then like from that point, then Cruel like sorted as like a restoring of the continent, but what it actually is, we learn, is the continent that was there prior turns into the Imperial Warren, which is why it's just pure ash and bones, is because it's the incinerated continent that Calor destroyed. And he sort of like makes another Warren into the new continent to heal the current continent or something of that sort. It's hard to explain. I don't know the exactness about it, but it's something like that. Sister of Cold Nights. Is that what they call her? Okay. Night Chill, Sister of Cold Nights. um, I knew it's Night Chill. Like, that's pretty obvious. Yeah. Calor curses them in turn. Yeah, he curses them back. And so, like, Cruel and his kin, they basically do what they need to heal the land, and in return, they're all cursed for it. So we learn that Draconis is the one that made Dragnapur. He doesn't say it directly at first, but he's like, "Oh, I'm forging a sword." And then he's probably, this isn't guaranteed, but Draconis is probably the chained up god that we saw inside of Dragnapur, is my guess. That Perrin ran into. So I'm guessing that's Draconis now. I think at first I'm like, oh, I think that's the cripple god, just going off the title or whatever, but no, that's probably Draconis. That's inside of Dragnapur. And then Cruel, I was like, at first I'm like, is Cruel the crippled god? But like, no, that he's not. I don't think he is anymore. But he was like, I forgot his curse exactly. Pretty sure it's just he's like weakened and everything, and people are forgetting him. And then his sister, we don't know hers. I'm not. See, I'm like not clear on all the curses. Glee is like going to be immortal forever, so she keeps being reborn and reborn into new mortal bodies, which is what Night Chill was. Because we see later, whenever they're talking about Night Chill, they're like, oh, well, the name Night Chill has been mentioned throughout history multiple times over and over. And so it's the same person over and over, and Tattersall gets mixed into the whole thing when Chill, and all three of their souls are getting mixed into Silver Fox. So it kind of gets mixed all together to make Silver Fox, but Night Chill, from what it sounds, is the sister. At least that's what I got from it. But yeah, that all happens. And I even put, like, when I was reading it, I'm like, I think this is where's Tattersall or I was like, yeah, I think it's where Tattersall is advised for her to find a good partner, which is Perrin, because they say that. I think it's like Cruel or someone is like, oh, make sure you find a good partner. To his sister, he says that, and so I'm like, oh, so maybe that's Perrin, or if you're Night Chill, it'd be like Beludron. That's just like a little theory part of it. But after all that, just before we go over the chat, there was a section where like a white furred beast, like sort of like a wolf is what I was imagining, that owns the land that Calor destroyed, is like looking for his mate, is what it talks about. I'm like, okay, well, who's this white furred beast that like is wounded, has one eye? What's going on with this exactly? Let me check on the chat real quick. Yeah, people thinking Cruel is a cripple god after this prologue is strangely common. Yeah, I thought it was just because the excerpt at the beginning, because like the excerpt said like 3 years after the fall, but I'm like, well, if the cripple god fell, it can't be Cruel, I don't think. The man on the throne trembled, his lips drew back in a rictus snarl. I shall break you, each of you. I swear this upon the bones of 7 million sacrificed. Cruel, you shall fade from the world. You shall be forgotten. Draconis, what you create shall be turned upon you. And as for the woman, unhuman hands shall tear your body into pieces upon a field of battle. Yet you shall know no respite. Oh, all those things happen. Now that we're reading through it. Thus my curse upon you, sister of cold nights. Calor, Ideron, Testusula. One voice spoken these curses thus. A wife wolf more ancient than the gods. Yeah, so actually, now that you put that in the chat, all the curses, they actually all happen. So Draconis gets sucked into Dragon of Her. And then Cruel is getting forgotten, as you said as well. And then you were ripped apart on the field of battle by non-human hands. So Animander Rake, he's not human, so he ripped her apart with his magic, basically, when she was Nightchill. So yeah, all those curses happened technically. For that, long time in the future, but yeah, they happen. But yeah, that's the end of the prologue, and so we see the White Wolf. He'll make a little like appearance in the beginning, of his section. I don't know what his relevance is yet, but I do have like I don't know what exactly his relevance is yet, but we'll see what happens with it. But it's interesting. He's like the dead spirit or like keeper, guardian, god of like the Imperial Warren that was destroyed. So he's gonna want some type of like vengeance, maybe. We'll see what happens with that. It'll be interesting. But yeah, I like the prologue. What they did. A lot of intrigue, a lot of things being built up. I really love when Erickson goes into like the talking about gods and magic, and it just gets super mythical, and everything. It's really always like fascinating because I don't know anything about the world, but I'm like, I'll accept it. That's cool. But we'll go into the beginning of the Spark in the Ashes. And so we're back in the 1164th year of Burn's Sleep, 2 months after Gardens of the Moon, and the 4th year of the Panion Domain. And then Talon year of the Second Gathering, which we learned the Gathering is around Silver Fox. So we get introduced to a bunch of new characters here. So we get Gruntle, who is the main character that we're taking our point of view from for this like subplot here. Gruntle is basically overlooking a bridge that was destroyed by Raced when Raced was awoken, and it's basically ruining all the trade and everything because it was the main bridge people were using when they were doing trades across like the river and everything. So it's just complicating everything. And so he's looking also at the destroyed land from Race as well. So he's just basically seeing the ramifications of Race being awoken in this area. And then while he's like looking this over, a manservant named Emancipor Reese approaches him and says that his boss wants to meet. So he goes to ask his current boss, Caruli, if that's okay. On the way, he like talks to a few of his like other members of the crew. So we have like Stani and Harlow are the other two like main members. And he's like telling them, giving them their orders before he goes to talk to Reese and Reese's crew, basically. Let me check the chat. Perhaps the most poetic detail is what would come to be called the Panion Wars was in fact the precursor to the entire campaign. The casual, indifferent destruction of a lone stone bridge by the Jakku tyrant on his ill-fated march to Darujistan. Yep. I believe that's the excerpt at the beginning. But it does become important with like that. They do mention the bridge a lot. But we get to the next section and we get introduced to a few things. So we're going to get introduced to Corbel Broach, Master Botchalane, and Squirrel, which is Reese's cat. My theory later, like with the cat, they're like, oh, it looks like he has mange. I'm assuming he's some type of like soul taken. That's just my like theory because of the way he like follows them, and as we learned with the experiments that these people are doing on other people and humans and people, I think he's some type of soul taken with Reese. I don't know. We'll see if that comes to fruition. But Reese takes Gruntle to meet Master Botchalane, and the way he sees Reese, he sees Reese's mange-covered cat. He meets the master, and after some prodding, follows him. He then meets the master's captain and partner, which is Corbel Broach, and they go to a crater or Barrow, basically the crater where Race emerged from, and they basically want to hire him to go in there with him, but he refuses. And they then ask him some questions about the continent, the most recent events, and obviously it shows that they're not from here, and so he can tell right away these people aren't like ordinary. Uh, and then while they're talking in the distance, Moonspawn shows up, and it's traveling southeast. However, Moonspawn has no like interest in their particular group, and it kind of just goes past them. Gruntle then separates from them and goes back to the camp. And so, yeah, a lot of intrigue at this moment. We don't know who exactly is what here, what they're doing, and like what the plans are. Yeah, the sorcery duo that have a novella. Oh, they have a novella series on them. Oh, that's cool. Um, Captain, I understand now why you are well spoken of among the Karanvasiri, since you are unique among them in possessing a functioning brain. Yeah, those people haven't heard of the Malazan Empire. Interesting, because I assume they were working for the Panion domain. But like, how do you not hear of the Malazan Empire unless they're like so up their own like butts that they don't like pay attention to others? I don't know. They're interesting. They're like necromancers, as we learn. Um, or one's a necromancer, one's like another thing, but they're basically like evil, dark magic users in a way. But um, yeah, after that part, we cut to a different section, back to the wolf spirit. So the wolf spirit's like, I guess he's in the Chaos Warren. So I'm wondering if the Chaos Warren's connected to the Imperial Warren at the same time, or he's like the main god of the Chaos Warren from what I was, unless that's just what his home is now. So the wolf spirit's looking at a man with a mirrored face to his. So I was like, okay, so this is probably Talk. Talk is alive if the man has a mirrored face because the wolf spirit's missing an eye, just like Talk. Um, and so I don't know what the ramifications are going to be, but the wolf just says that this is like an opportunity for him. So I'm wondering if like Talk was dying in the Chaos Warren after the thing with Hairlock from the beginning, and he was like dying, and the wolf spirit saw that, and he's like, "This is my opportunity," and so he like somehow merged with Talk, and we don't know it yet. And so Talk was then able to like revive sort of once he merged. He got enough life force to get out of the Chaos Warren and end up wherever he's at with like Envy and all them. Because I'm still not sure if where he's at with Envy is even like the same continent that we're on, Genbakis. But that's my theory is that like the wolf sort of like merged with Talk in a way to be a vessel for him, but then also like revive Talk, and so that he could escape the Chaos Warren, I guess. Maybe I don't know. That's like my weird theory on it. Um, and so basically after that section, we see Talk wakes up in I believe what's the Chaos Warren, or it might be the continent that he's already on. It wasn't super clear to me at first, but he could basically tell that like time has passed because his bow and his like bowstrings and everything are like ruined because of it all. So he goes exploring until he finds a tower because he needs equipment and tools and everything. Um, so he goes exploring, finds the tower, and then he runs into a body. The body we find out is Tool, which is pretty cool. Um, and so it says we're in Morn. We're not in the Chaos Warren anymore. We're in Morn, like in the prologue. So we're wherever that is. And let's see. Yeah, this is where we get introduced to like a bunch of new characters. I really like this subplot with Talk, and there's a lot of intrigue in this area and a lot of mystery with Lady Envy and everything. Um, yeah, okay, they're in the south again, Bacchus. Got it. Since they're not in the Morn at the moment. Okay. Yeah, they mentioned Morn though. I think they're going that way, or I don't remember exactly, but like locations are not my strong suit when it comes to geography. um, but yeah, basically, Talk and Tool, they see a woman and two wolf-like creatures approaching them. And basically we learn that she is Envy, and the Draconius's daughter is who she is, and she has like another sister, Lady Spite, who we haven't met yet. Um, and so we meet Envy and her two wolves. She invites Talk and Tool into the tower, where we then run into Senu, who is a Segale. He basically wants to. It's basically like a species that is very combat oriented and strength oriented. They won't speak to you if they think you're submissive to them, kind of thing. And they only address those that are like higher than them in power. So he sees Tool and he basically wants to challenge him right away, but they're stopped from the fighting. Like Envy's like no, and then they all go inside because she's like, these are my guests. And then Talk is talking to Envy, and then all of a sudden Tool like knocks Senu unconscious and like flying across the room, because Senu tried attacking him, and so he literally knocked him out with like the flat of his blade. You could tell how skilled like Tool is. He's like, oh, I didn't know if you wanted me to kill him, so I just knocked him out with the flat of my blade. I could kill him now if you want. She's like, no, that's fine. You can leave him alive. He's submissive now. He lost to you. He's not going to do anything. Um, and so she continues talking and is discussing like the wound in the sky that's occurring because apparently there's a wound. And then Talk then mentions that he has to leave and exchange for supplies. He makes a deal with Envy basically where she gives him some supplies and food, and he's gonna have to do something for her, but she doesn't tell him what it is yet. And then she and Tool then talk some more about Rake and Brood, and she makes a decision to then travel with Tool and Talk. And Talk is also feeling like attraction towards her, but then it's also like he thinks it may be like a hint of seduction since she is Envy, and like she's trying to manipulate him is what he thinks. Basically, he doesn't like believe it, even though she's seems like she's kind of just like happy there's another like human presence she can talk to because the Segala are just like brutes, basically. But that happens. We also learn it might be in a later section of this one, but we learn that Brood, Animander, Rake, and Envy all at one point were like partners, and also another dude. I think in another section in the next chapter, but we'll get to it when I have it on my notes. But he was with them as well. Yeah, Talk wakes up at morn and they start to head towards the Panion area throughout these chapters. Yeah, that's a later section. Okay, yeah, where he learns that. But yeah, pretty interesting. I like the setup for this group here. And I like where they go and the intrigue that's like there. I like Talk as a character. I always liked him. So I like. I wish we got more from this group because I don't like. Even though they're like in Genbakis, like something feels off about their location to me. Like it's just like out of place. I don't know if it's like the part of Genbakis they're in, or if they're like secretly in a different like time in Genbakis, like in the past, since they mentioned there's like a wound over Morn. So I'm like, are they back in like where the prologue was with Memories of Ice? Like, did he get teleported like way back in time? But then if he did, then that means like Talk would or Tool wouldn't be like immortal yet, wouldn't remember things. I don't know. I'm probably overthinking it a lot, but and they're probably just in Genbakis, but something seems off about like the location, or not location, but like the where they're at, because yeah, they're just in the normal south, similar to the area in the first part of the prologue. Okay, it's just a very barren wasteland, I guess, or not wasteland, but they're just in the south. Okay, that's the end of chapter one, though. Pretty good start. He has a really good job at doing his first chapters. But I was like, at first when I was reading, I'm like, where is our like group from Gardens of the Moon? I thought we were gonna like get introduced to them all, which happens later. So we go to chapter two, um, and so we meet a trader named Muneg, and he's basically from the Pale, or he's in the Pale from Daru, and he stopped by Picker and Blend. They search his belongings and find out he has valuable torques, is what they call it, available. And the torques have been blessed by a new tiger god. And so Blend ends up buying the torques and tests them out. And then she reveals that she's also a bridge burner during this point as well, like Blend, but she puts on the torques and they're like stuck on her body, as we see. Because they weren't really blessed, they were more like cursed. Uh, Munich then meets up with his master, who is a god. He gives him some wooden cards that he smuggled, and as a reward, the god then heals his tumors on his legs, but kills his legs and cripples him. Crippled god. He then mentions this god is the cripple god, and he like crawls out of the tent that he like was in. So it's pretty cruel what happened there, because he's like, "Oh, I'll heal your tumors. You just don't need your legs anymore. Bam, you're crippled." I'm like, okay, I think I'd rather have tumors on my legs and have them eventually go away than like just lose my legs in general immediately. um, but I guess that's one way to do it. This is sort of where we like kind of get introduced to the theory of the cripple god, where we don't know his like motive yet, but his power basically is to deteriorate or kill or destroy everything. He's just destruction, like pure destruction. Um, like rot, poison. I don't crippling. He wants to cripple everything basically. Um, yeah, since the wound in the prologue is where he came out of. Blendon Picker and Antsy are in Guards in the Moon at one point. Yeah, they're mentioned. I just forgot about them. Um, for it, I think they're mentioned like in the bar in the Pale. When Perrin was getting introduced and he was going to like that um, in the Pale when he was like at first when he was the captain. But yeah, pretty interesting. Our first introduction to the Cripple God. We'll get a lot more with him. But then we cut back to Blend and Picker, who discuss a pebble that they placed in Munig's bag that will also allow them to track him. The Torques uh, are also cursed that Blend put on, and so he's trying to find Quickben to have him check it out and help him get them off, basically. Um, and then from that point, Picker, sorry, not Blend. Picker has the Torques. So Picker has the Torques. Quickben arrives on a black Moranth in the next section, and he examines Picker and tells her that she basically is stuck with it permanently because it was like cursed. Um, and then she tells him about like the tracker that they put on Munig, and so Quickben decides to track him down and see what's going on there. And at first, I feel like it's to be like, oh, what was he smuggling aside from that, and also like what's the motive here? Because he's trying to like explore all the gods as we learn and things that are happening, all the barrows and all the mysteries to try to solve something, as we see later. So we cut to the next section. This is a really cool section. So Quickben is thinking about the armies converging and the Panion Seer and the domain and how everything, like the imminent war that's happening. He decides to go into the warren to track the pebble. It's an unfamiliar warren, and he stumbles upon a tent. In the tent is the cripple god. Quickben then talks to him, and he asks Quick to do him a favor. Quickben attacks him, and then he tries to leave. Um, so basically, he's asking him to do a favor. Quickben doesn't want to do it, so he attacks them so that he can like try to escape because he's not going to be able to escape otherwise. Cripple God is able to like hold him in place, and then like to help him while he's there, a giant shows up and saves him. The cripple god starts hurting the giant, and so it starts dying, and it tells Quickben to save them and to help them. And Quickben asks how long he has, and it replies tens of years. Quickben will then try to save the giant, and I believe he leaves the warren, but I believe the giant is like sent by Burn, um, which would make sense because Burn is being poisoned and only has like certain amount of like years left as well, so tens of years, like they said, left to be saved from the poison. So I believe it's Burn is helping to save Quickben from this warren. But pretty cool. The ramifications here and like the power of the cripple god. He's literally he probably would have killed Quickben if it wasn't for Burn stepping in there. Um, but we then cut back and Picker shakes Quickben back awake, and he basically looks terrified. And then the two people that are there, they prepare his quarrel, his Moranth quarrel, and they get ready to fly. Picker comments that the look on Quickben's face is terrifying. It's because he is terrified because he almost died from the crippled god, basically. So he's like, what the hell did I stumble upon? Okay, the giant just used Burns Warren to end up there. Okay, got it. Still, pretty interesting. Burn, forgive me. Okay, and we cut to the next section. We finally get Perrin again after a long time. Perrin's getting like, he says he's getting a lot of dreams of drowning in an abyss of like darkness and everything. And he believes it's because he touched the hound's blood. He's also been feeling like a pull of the chains ever since he left Dragnapur um, to Trots, and they basically talk about the bridge burners and Dujek and like what's going on. Hedge also comes to relieve Trots of his duty in this moment. During this, we get like certain thoughts from Perrin, so he doesn't know what's happening throughout the continent fully. So like he in his mind, he's like, "Oh, I hope Tavor is doing okay and succeeding, and like I hope they're doing well with Lassine's like culling of the nobles and everything." He doesn't know Tavor is like the adjunct fully yet. He doesn't know what's gonna happen to Felicine. He's gonna learn that later. We cut to the next section, and Trots and Hedge start talking about the upcoming parlay with Brood and how Trots was giving Perrin a hard time. He's like, you don't need to give him such a hard time, basically. Uh, then in the next section, we go back to Perrin. Perrin meets with Whiskey Jack and is offered to lead another group instead of the Bridge Burners if he chooses. Perrin decides to stick with the Bridge Burners because he's persistent. And then he tells Whiskey his plan is to basically have them join Ansi and the Ninth. And then during this conversation, a Deuteron comes up and gives intel to them. Perrin then orders her to have the Ninth gather up in a hurry, and he is not going to have. Basically, he's not going to have an easy job because no one in the Ninth or the Bridge Burners wants to listen to him. Because they're all veterans, so like even the Deuteron there like addresses Whiskey Jack, but she doesn't address Perrin directly. And Whiskey Jack's like, listen to your captain, basically, in the moment. And so that's something Perrin's gonna have to be dealing with. We then cut forward, and it's Mallet and Whiskey Jack, and Mallet points out to Whiskey Jack that Perrin is sick. When he tried to use his warrant on him, it basically is repelled, and if Perrin keeps trying to like fight what's going on in his body, it's gonna eventually like grow tumors on him and kill him from like sickness. And so Whiskey Jack tells Mallet to talk to Quick Ben about it and see what they can do from a distance. Mallet then asks Whiskey about the outlook of things, and he basically tells him that things are bad with like their whole situation. Oh, Detrin's her name. She's a Napon. Okay, got it. I didn't catch that at first. My bad. But yeah. So, and that's the end of chapter 2. Basically, we just get reintroduced back to Perrin and everyone, and we learn like what's going on with Perrin and his the magic around him, and how we learn he's gonna become very very important in the upcoming ramifications and playings of this book, I guess. So we'll see what happens with them. Well, we know what happens, but we'll see what happens in the future of Memories of Ice. So we cut to chapter 3, and we get introduced to the Maib, who we've seen before. She's basically a vessel, or she's the mother slash vessel to Silver Fox. And where her name comes from, Maib, she says, is because it means a container for one use to be discarded. So she's a vessel for one use to be discarded. Once Silver Fox is up to age, she's basically gonna die. So I mean, it's a fitting name. So Maib is basically, she's with Carlot, and she's discussing the events of the child and her being a vessel for Silver Fox, who is basically Tattersall, Nightchill, and maybe Beludron all in one. And then after discussing the significance and the role of Nighthawks, Carlot approaches Silver Fox and asks her if she enjoyed her like time playing, because she's like playing in the field. She replies, not quite, because the death of the hills saddens her. So she has like a connection to the world, and she's wiser than her years, obviously. So this basically shows her power and her knowledge beyond her years. And then they then all get ready for the upcoming parlay that's going on. So we're getting the other perspective of the parlay from like Brood's group at this point. The Maib is meant to be a postpartum depression made physical. Oh, okay. That makes sense. I could see that, especially with the stuff that happens to her later. It's like if you don't get out of the postpartum depression. But the next section here, Silver Fox tells Mybe that Carlot about she tells Mybe and Carlot about the importance of memories and how we are not so different from one another, and that her wisdom basically, after saying all this to them, scares Mybe internally. Um, and so out in the distance, the parley is about to commence with Brood. We witness the Malazans approach, and we see Dujek, Whiskey Jack, Perrin, or not Perrin, Dujek, Whiskey Jack, and then someone else. They don't really say the names. And then there's also like the Black Moranth that shows up as well. And then Silver Fox notes that she trusts Whiskey, but not Dujek, and does not know how to feel about any of them. Uh, and then, so basically, she can see face. She doesn't remember like events and stuff, but when she sees a face, she remembers the feeling she had for that face. And so that's why she trusts Whiskey Jack and not Dujek, who we learn is like basically betraying everyone from Lacine. We learn he's still working for Lacine, basically. So they all decide to move in closer as Brood approaches, and Brood has Calor with him, which was like, whoa, Calor. Oh yeah, Calor here. So we learned what Calor like is and what he does, because we knew he's the second to Brood from Gardens of the Moon, but he's only there for like a brief moment. We don't get much. But Calor basically is the one who destroyed the Imperial Warren, which we'll find out. Like that gets mentioned later. So I'm just like, it's very interesting that Calor is just here after like being alive for so long. And he hates Silver Fox, as we learned, because he knows who she is, being Nightchill and the sister of Cold Knights. Um, so, oh yeah, and then I think the Moranth leader's name is Arthonthus. They mentioned that for a second. So Brood basically introduces himself and everyone else, and the two sides are pleased with the alliance, and they like part ways for a second, or they're just there. And then in the next section, Crone shows up, and she basically shows up and starts like talking to everyone and pisses everyone off. Like both sides start like roasting her. And they just don't like her because she's like she messes with them too. Like she's not like innocent. Um, so uh, we do. We also get a moment where she's talking to Silver Fox, and Silver Fox points out that she's like, oh, you came from dead carcasses of something, and then she's like, shut up, kid. No one wants to know that. Shut up. um, and she's like, okay. So we don't know fully what she comes from at first, but we learn that it's from like body parts, or like the Great Ravens are from the Crippled God, which is pretty interesting. Which is why they devour magic. Um, for that, which makes sense now that I'm like linking stuff together, as we learn later with the status of burn. What Kaladin Brood mentions is one of the outcomes if he were to like destroy the Cripple God or destroy the chains, um, is that all sorcery would cease to exist, and the Great Ravens devour magic. And so I guess if he broke, now that I'm thinking, if he broke the Crippled God, it would probably just split the Crippled God like it did with the Ravens into pieces, and it would just devour all sorcery basically and kill everyone eventually. I don't know the exactness of that section. It was a little hazy for me, but I'm like trying to piece it together as we go. Read through it here. No, Arthanthos is the standard bearer, I think. Okay. Got it. Thank you for that. But yeah, so we learned that there's more to meets the eye than the Great Ravens. They're not just like ravens per se. So um everyone's like gathering around, like during this all, everyone's gathering around this table as well. And we learned the table is like a table that was stolen from Whiskey Jack and the Bridge Burners by the Mutts. Basically, they had this table during a piece of combat, and they're playing like cards on it during the combat. And instead of like fighting, they're just like playing cards. And so it's like a legendary table, I guess, for some reason. Um, and so during this, Silver Fox refers to Whiskey as her uncle. He doesn't really bat an eye at it for some reason. And then everyone talks of their plans basically, for Capuzon and to defeat the Panian Domain and the Panian Seer. Everyone's basically in unison on the plan. During all of this, though, Silver Fox keeps speaking up, and Dujek questions who she is. Calor gets triggered and goes off saying that they should kill her. Can't trust her. She's evil. blah blah blah. And so he grabs her, and then Brood orders him to release her. He does because he's afraid of Brood, which I mean makes sense. But everyone starts like threatening Calor, even like Dujek does, Whiskey Jack, to the point where Whiskey Jack actually backhands him for even like attempting to grab a child. Um, and then a fight doesn't ensue because he deserved it. But we learn that Silver Fox is who Silver Fox is, and she reveals to everyone that she's Tattersail and Nightchill from that night, and that she's also of the Talani Moss, and that she will command them. And this is basically the second convergence where all the Talani Moss are coming because she's like their leader now, in a way. The bit of the crippled god you see here in Memories of Ice is only a piece of him, since he is still chained. Okay, makes sense. Yeah, because they mentioned that as well. Like, they mentioned the chains on him. And I'm like, how are we seeing him when he's like still chained? But he's chained to burn, and poisoning burn. So it's just a piece. It's not his like entirety. Okay, got it. So that kind of helps because I'm like, if they destroy him, the part that's chained, then it releases the rest of him, which is why Kaladin doesn't want to destroy it. It's a very complicated situation, but um, making more sense as we go along. So after Silver Fox just like drops that on all of them and reveals who she is, we cut to Whiskey Jack, who's like thinking over all the ramifications, everything that happened today. He doesn't really know if or when he should tell Perrin exactly. So he's just confused about it. He then like locks eyes with Carlot, and the two like sort of like while locking eyes are like, yeah, we need to meet and talk about all this. Um, and so they decide to have a meet. They talk to each other and like, okay, we'll have a meeting in private. And then we cut to the next section, and Crone is basically thinking over everything as well. And this is where we learn about like the great ravens, getting their powers from the crippled god. Um, it also discusses Brood being ascendant, and he's like super strong, essentially. And then the next section we go back to Maib, who is basically doing, she's basically having like depressive thoughts, because of everything. And then Silver Fox reveals more about the Jaghood and the Talon, and she argues with Calor, where she reveals that the Imperial Warren was a realm that was destroyed by Calor. Calor is basically also a defender of the Jaghood. So he's like a sympathizer with them. So he doesn't like the Talon because of what they did to the Jaghood, for that. So he's not a fan of the Talon. We also learn more history at this point between them and Silver Fox. Whiskey Jack and Carlot and Maib then leave the tent. Whiskey Jack asks her what she remembers, and she says she remembers faces and feelings that are attached to the faces, but she doesn't remember like the actual physical memories. And so he mentions Perrin at one point, and she already knows, like, she still remembers Perrin, and she wants to meet with him. And Carlot and Whiskey Jack then go off to have their conversation together. Calor snort was muffled. Nightchill, he murmured. Such a lack of imagination. Calor speaking the truths. Yeah, if it's a daughter of the Knights or sister of the... I forgot what the name was that you said. Yeah, but Nightchill makes sense. Of the Cold Knights. Was it sister of the Cold Knights? But yeah, Nightchill makes sense when it comes from that. Yeah. Soon Silver Fox will be 2 months old in the body of a 20-year-old with the experience of a 100,000-year-old. Mm-hmm. Basically. Like, she's killing Maib to age her body. But she's still a child, though. She's only like 12. And this, like, as we learn later with Perrin, is like a huge issue because obviously. Yeah, a weird situation. So the two have a conversation, and Carlot and Whiskey Jack, they're happy to be allies. Carlot reveals that the ravens are pieces of the crippled god, God's flesh, and Crone is the first of them. In fear, Rake basically keeps her close due to this. So the reason he keeps Crone close is because he wants to have them like in direct vicinity. If the crippled god decides to do anything, or if the ravens decide to do anything, he wants to be able to deal with it. And so the two continue talking, and they also bring up the question of what happened to Thelamin and Beludron, um, as well, those bodies, because apparently there's the other dead bodies that occurred during this whole situation. Um, that's the end of chapter 3, though. Good chapter. We're getting all this stuff built up. A lot of this sub book is just now I'm thinking of the spark and the ashes. So it's the parlay before everything starts. So the spark before the fire. So it's like, here's what's happening. Here's what we're building up, and everything's gonna go into action now. Not action per se, but like everything's gonna go into place after this section. So we cut back to chapter 4, and we get introduced to a new character, Buke. And so Stani and Gruntle are overlooking the crossing, and they witness one merchant lose everything in the river, so they're showing like how tough it is to cross without the bridge. Gruntle then notices Buke got hired by Reese and Botchalin. Myrtle has some, and then Gruntle has some like tea with Buke, and warns him like of Botchalin and Reese, and he's like, you probably shouldn't trust them, bro. And Buke doesn't really care. He basically lost his whole family, and he's just like doing what he has to survive. And so he's like, Gruntle's like, don't try to be a hero, basically. If you're trying to protect him, like, worry about yourself. But Buke doesn't care. He's like a death wish, especially as we learn later. So Gruntle and him, like I said, they warn him against his safety, and then also Harlow shows up and he's there. And they have like a banter between Harlow and Stani and Gruntle and all of them, and we get like an introduction to like them as a crew and like what they mean exactly, and like their interactions with each other. Short little section there to basically introduce Buke. So after that, Quick Ben visits some lady, fortune teller type, and she basically he asks her about Burn, 20 questions about Burn. So we're gonna play 20 questions. He finds out that Burn is sick currently, and her dreams are of delirium, essentially, because of the sickness. So he asks her to help Burn, but the woman says, or he asks her how he can help Burn, but the woman doesn't really know how to help Burn in this situation. We cut back to Spindle. And so, oh, sorry, we cut back to Perrin, and Perrin sees Quick Ben outside of the shack of the fortune teller, and he looks worried. Quick Ben tells him that he will let him know what's going on once he has all the pieces in place. He does this a lot. He does this with Whiskey Jack too. So I don't know if that's just like who Quick Ben is, or it's just like the situation itself, but he's not telling anyone anything. He's keeping everything close to his chest, all his cards close to his chest, in this situation. Yeah, Quick Ben goes wild looking for any idea of what to do. Yeah, he's going wild. Like literally at the end of like the section, like Whiskey Jack's like, bro, you're like sacrificing goats and everything. What are you doing? Like he's just like, I need to find a solution. Like he's so worried about it all, but he won't tell anyone the issue because he's like worried about revealing it, even though like Brood and Rake are the ones that know about it directly, and then Perrin learns about it as well. So everyone knows about it, but they're not talking about it yet. Miscommunication. um, but yeah, so Quick Ben, and Perrin, then they what's it called? They meet up with Mallet as well, and they meet up with like the rest of the group, and they're going over to the parlay basically. Yeah, with everything Whiskey Jack has to deal with at the moment, he doesn't want to overwhelm him. Yeah, he's overwhelmed himself though. I feel like he needs to talk to someone about it. Like he needs someone to confide in, which I don't know if he has. Maybe Callum would be that person if Callum was there, because they were kind of like the duo in Gardens of the Moon, but he's not there at the moment. So we meet up, Quick Ben and Perrin and all of them meet up with Spindle, um, and they head over to the parlay. Perrin's giving orders to Spindle and tells him to open his warren, or open her warren. Spindle basically says that the warren is triggered. They can't open it because when they open their warren, the way they use it, it triggers things. That's all they really say at the moment. And then I think they're kind of pulling a prank on Perrin. They're like, oh, there's like a presence in that alleyway. What's going on? Um, there's also a presence in a Talani Moss present in the Brood's camp. They notice, which is obviously Silver Fox. Um, but some animals go crazy in the alleyway. They start like ramming into the walls and like just going insane and ballistic. Um, and we learn that this is like what happens when Spindle triggers her Warren. Um, is basically um all animals that are in the distance like go crazy. So it's actually useful against like cavalry. They said they used it against cavalry before and stopped like a whole unit, basically. Um, and what's it called? So yeah, after we learn all that, they continue going and traveling towards the parlay. They go through the killing field, and then they arrive at Brood's tent. Whiskey Jack is outside and tells Perrin of what happened to his family, basically, and his sisters after the culling. So this is where he learns everything going on. Like his world's starting to like collapse on itself at this point. Let me check the chat here. His internally sour disposition did not invite conversation, nor did the foul-smelling thigh-length black and gray hair shirt he wore, woven from his dead mother's hair, if the rumor held any truth. As Perrin pulled in alongside the man, he glanced at that shirt. Hood's breath, that could be an old woman's hair. Classic Spindle shirt. Yeah, I didn't know exactly what was going on with that, like the hair thing. I was like, what? I guess it's just like what Spindle decides to wear. Um, yeah. So after we get to the tent, Perrin learns of everything of Felicine and Tavor and everything going on. We get a quote on page 109. Oh yeah, that's what I put. So Whiskey Jack is like talking to Perrin about everything, and meeting with Silver Fox, and he's basically taking him to meet with Silver Fox, and Perrin doesn't want to go. And he doesn't tell him what it's for at first as well. And eventually he's like, you'll have to just take my indulgence. Just listen to me. Follow me, Perrin. Come with me. And Whiskey Jack kind of like, this is some of the parts where I'm kind of warming up to him because he's kind of like trying to be like a father figure to Perrin in a way. And he like cares for his crew, as you can tell. And we learn like he genuinely cares for them. So Perrin, he basically sees Silver Fox as a child, and this like breaks him because he's like, I love Tattersall. I can't love a kid. Like, what is this? Like, I don't want to see her like this. Like, he basically wants to wait until she's an adult. He doesn't want to like see her as a kid at all. He just wants to wait. He doesn't want to think about that. And it's just like ruining his perception of her. And he's just like conflicted and confused. And it's just like breaking him internally that he, like, it's not how it's supposed to be. He's supposed to have Tattersall back, and he doesn't like what's happening, essentially. It's a tough situation. There's like a similar situation. I won't name the book, but there's a book where this sort of happens. And there's like a character, it's like reverse aging. So like a child is like growing young until they eventually die. And then like that child used to be an adult, and the person, it's like Benjamin Button syndrome. And then the person that was like married to that child is like growing old. So he has to watch the person, his like lover, grow into like a child, and he can't love a child. So he can't love his person who he loves anymore. And the person doesn't know him anymore. And so he like falls into a great depression. It reminded me a lot of that. It's like sort of that Benjamin Button syndrome. But I mean, obviously she's aging. It's just more of like the not being able to love the person you knew as a certain person because she's reborn as a child in this case. But yeah, so after Perrin learns of all this, basically says he can't love her. He wants Tattersall to not be he also doesn't want Tattersall to be an amalgamation of multiple people. He just wants Tattersall. He doesn't want Nightchill. He doesn't want Belladron. He just wants Tattersall. So it's a tough situation in general. So Whiskey Jack tells him there's more important things than his love at the moment. He needs to protect Silver Fox from Calor. He also tells him that Rake is most likely on their side as well. Perrin in this also reveals like everything about the hounds and the sword. He tells Whiskey Jack what happened to him basically and what's going on. And the two of them then go to finally meet with Silver Fox. In the next section there, We cut to a section and we get Spindlepicker, Trots, and Blend. Trots, Blend, and Hedge. They all go at night, basically, to the camp, and they steal the table back, essentially, from Brood's camp. So they're getting their table back. And they cut to the next section and they start playing cards and it's not working. They're like, what's going on? Why isn't the table working? What's happening here? And then they look under the table and there's a painting. They don't know what the painting is from. It looks like a Rivi painting. But then one of them copies it down like it's a new card. And then after the squad goes back to reunite with Ansi, half of the squad then goes back to reunite with Ansi after stealing the table. These like brief moments of comedy are always good with Malazan. It was pretty enjoyable. I'm like, okay, we're having a whole section here just on like a table heist. They're stealing it back from the Mutts. And then we cut back to Perrin, who goes to speak with Silver Fox. And basically, Perrin learns that Brood, Calor, he learns about Brood, Calor, the Dead Houses, Dancer, Kalenved, the Deck of Dragons. He learns that he is technically unaligned, or there's an unaligned card. He is the card. He's the keeper of the Deck of Dragons, basically. All this information gives him a quest, basically, as the master of the deck, to be like this hero. And Perrin just like, his whole psyche is destroyed right now. His mind is messed up and he can't focus on anything, and he just like doesn't want this reality in his head anymore. He just wants to like crawl away, but he can't. He's just stuck here. Perrin also finds out about the events of Deadhouse Gates just before this. Yeah, so he learned about Felicine, what happened to Felicine and Tabor and all that. So he's going through a lot at the moment. He's just like not in the right state of mind to take all this information. And so I was like, he's just struggling really bad. This is a really heartbreaking scene because like of the struggle Perrin's going through. He basically learned that like his sister is the adjunct who sold his other sister to slavery, and his parents died and were killed, his mom and dad. And then also the person he loved is reborn, but as a child, so he can't love her back. And now he also is like this master of death, like be a hero in this quest, and he's just not in the right state of mind for this at all. Yeah, also the death of his parents. Yeah, he's not in the right state of mind, which is like if you just found out about the death of your parents, uh, your sister going to be a slave, your other sister sent her to be a slave, and is ruling an empire that you're fighting, and for him, even if you don't like him as a character, he there's a lot of things happening there. But that's the end of the chapter, though, of chapter 4. So yeah, learn a lot there, a lot of interesting things, a lot of intrigue. Even though like nothing physically happens, they're not like doing a lot. Like a lot of things are being learned in this section that are very interesting and will have major ramifications for the future. We then go to chapter 5. So chapter 5, this is the section where we learn about Osric. That's what his name was. Osric was the Ascendant that was with Rake and Envy. So basically, Talk and the crew, they're traveling, and they decide to make camp for the night. Envy's talking with Talk, and basically, she can sense that Talk doesn't trust him. And he's like, why are you talking to me? Like, he thinks she's trying to seduce him and manipulate him. And she's like, I just want to have a conversation with another human. Like, I'm stuck with these, like, dudes here that are brutes and they don't talk. I got a freaking Talani Moss that doesn't say anything. I got some wolves that are nice, but they don't talk to me. It's nice to have, like, someone who I can actually converse with. And Talk doesn't believe her. He's like, you're trying to manipulate me, because he has no self-esteem. And so he's like, there's no reason for you to be nice to me, essentially. And so they're doing that. He's warned that she's like, Envy then, like, he's worried about being taken over with seduction. Envy then takes initiative, becomes friends with Talk, and convince him otherwise. She takes it up as her goal. She's like, I'm going to convince you that I'm your friend, basically. She then goes to take a bath at their camp while bow and arrow, like he said he would, for Talk. We then watch him use like all the different things such as obsidian and antlers and things like that to craft the weapon. It's not quite complete, but talks to Tool about Envy. He learns Envy used to be the partner with Rake and someone named Osric. We don't know why. And then they separated, but it was like an argumentative separation between Rake and Envy. And then the two of them talk about the Segula, like what they are as a people, and like how their culture works, where it's like a culture of power and respect and submissivity. I don't know if that's a real word, uh, but um, basically how their culture works. And basically, Tool questions. He goes to Senu, the one he already beat, because he's above him in the ladder, so he has to like talk to him now if he wants. So he questions him about wanting to kill the Panian Doman people because of what they did, and basically the Senu are like, we'll fight them when they come to us. We're not gonna like fight them how it is. We've already fought them, blah blah. Like, so the Panian people are just like messing with everyone at this point. Um, and basically they're like, we're heading the same way as Envy, so we're gonna go with her since she's like going towards them. And that's the end of that section. Let me check back in on the chat real quick. Okay. Before houses, there were holds. Perrin continued. Oh, yeah, going back to Perrin's thing. Before houses, there were holds. Perrin continued with remorseless logic. Both fixed, both stationary. Settled before settlement, was wandering house from hold, hold from gate. In motion, ceaseless motion, he squeezed shut his eye. A wagon burdened beneath the countless souls, sealing the gate into dark. And I sent 2 hounds through that wound. I saw the seal punctured by the abyss. You sent for me, a quest. Really, Silver Fox? Aimless, purposeless men do not undertake quests. That's for wall-eyed heroes in epic poems. The wagon carries the gate into Corral Glen, the warren of darkness. The sword gathers souls to seal it. Such a wound it must be to demand so many souls. Which is decent explanation of Dragnipur for the moment. Yeah, you're right. Okay, yeah, that is a decent explanation for Dragnipur. Basically, the wagon is bringing all these souls to seal the wound of the darkness, basically. Memories of Ice is again mentioned in this excerpt, but unbidden this time, which is like the fear the Amas associate with it. Yes, you are correct. They do mention it with that. Excuse me. Okay, so the next section after we got there, everyone's basically eating around the fire. And then the other Segula guy, I believe his name is Sek, he attacks Tool. The two fight. Um, there's more resistance this time, and they're fighting for a while. And so the basically talks about like or the other Segula then talks about the seventh, which is Rake. So I guess at some point Rake visited their homeland, and when he visited, because he doesn't like stare away from people and he doesn't like back down from a challenge, he basically was like fighting everyone and killing them with Dragnipur and like sucking them into the sword. And so they call him like the Black Swordsman or something like that, or they then refer to him as Black Sword, and he's the seventh because he's the seventh in line in terms of power. Um, and we learned that like the person that's with him is the third in line, the strongest one. So Tool finally knocks out the second brother with the flat of his sword, and Envy goes to him, and Mock says it's forbidden to heal the brother. Envy doesn't care. Envy literally like pushes him like with her powers like far away, and she's just like showing her dominance. She's like, "I control you. You listen to me, you little rat." um, so she pushes him away and then heals Mock because she wants 3 servants. She needs 3 servants, she says. So it shows her display of dominance in this moment. But it was interesting learning about the structure and how this guy is like the third strongest, but Rake's probably stronger. He just didn't fight them all. He was tired of fighting them because it was annoying. They kept challenging him at the moment. And so he's like, I don't want to deal with this. Like I'm out. Um well, the seventh is because he killed because he killed the seventh. Maybe he'd be the first if he wanted. Who knows? I feel like he would be the first if he wanted. I feel like he just didn't want. He's like tired. He's like, you guys are annoying. I don't want to deal with you. And so he's just like, I'm done. And he like leaves. But yeah, he's the seventh because he killed the seventh, and then the guy with him is the third, I believe, Mock. But he's not like Envy messed him up, so I'm pretty sure Tool is stronger than him, and I'm also pretty sure that like Rake can beat him as well. Like I think they're not as strong as they are. Like they're stronger than normal humans, by a landslide, but they're not like stronger than Ascendants. Essentially, that's the way I kind of viewed it. So after that section, we then cut back to Quick Ben, Mallet, and Whiskey Jack, and they're discussing Perrin, and what Perrin told them about Rake, the Hounds, and Dragnipur, everything that went on with that. Quick Ben then decides not to tell them about the crippled god, because he decides he's going to handle it on his own. He also mentions Night Chill in this moment, and how like he mentions that Night Chill has been mentioned throughout history multiple times, for that and stuff. And so this is kind of where we get like a hint, like, oh, Night Chill is probably Cruel's sister. If you didn't pick up on it by now, which I picked up on that. I didn't know like the name of Cruel's sister, but yeah. This is actually an event from Erickson's D&D, that Hanamander adventure. I can definitely see that as in the D&D, because like going to a city and then basically everyone in the city challenging you, like, fight me, fight me, fight me. And he's like, okay, I'm out of here. This is just no. Okay. And so the next section here, we got to Dujek and Whiskey, and they talk of Calor, Brood, and Moonspawn, and the plans against the Panion domain. The big concern is Silver Fox controlling the Talani Moss and the ramifications with it. Basically, Brood said he's going to protect her from, for now, from Calor, but they're warned against agitating Brood. They don't want to piss him off because of how strong he is. They didn't talk about Brood's power and how he's able to wield Burn's hammer. And they're also like worried about how Silver Fox decides to control the Talani Moss, because like Kellanved, when he controlled them, didn't use them very much. He used them very sparingly. But if they don't know what the ramifications are, if Silver Fox decides to use them like a lot compared to Kellanved. So after that section, we get a section with Brood, Mybe, and Carlot where they discuss Silver Fox and if Nightchill or Tattersail will emerge. They don't know which spirit's going to emerge, basically. Also, Brood doesn't like seeing like Mybe in this withering state where she's basically falling apart. He like really doesn't like how Silver Fox is like a leech, essentially, taking her like life force. And he also like, everyone's basically wary of Nightchill. They don't want Nightchill to take over the body. They want Tattersail to take over Silver Fox, not Nightchill, or to emerge. So they basically all agree that they want Tattersail. Both sides, even like the Malazans, want Tattersail as well. Even though they're not talking directly to each other about it, they're both on the same state of who they want to show up. And then Brood also says that he will not kill her at first sight of Nightchill, but he's going to push for Tattersail. So like if Nightchill is like peeking out, he's not going to kill her right away. Not unless it's like for sure that Nightchill shows up. We then cut back, and then we see like a party approaching in the distance at the end of the section. It's the Daru party, as we learn, and they arrive. They're greeted by the Malazans and Brood's camp. Krupp is the first one to show up out of everyone, of course, and Krupp is like trying to act as like a speaker for everyone. And Mybe recognizes him as well from the dream. They ask him like what elder god was present in the dream, but before he can answer, Murillo shows up and interrupts him. Cole then shows up as well, and he's with Diarl, Chalice's dad. And they basically like the Malazans and like Krupp is just like talking a bunch of crap, like of random stuff, and they're being rude to him. He's like, "Get out of here, old man. What do you want?" Like Cole became really like mean to Krupp in this like next 2 months. I don't know when he became like, I guess they never really like talked before because he was just like a drunk at the bar, but he's just like really rude to Krupp. Like, yeah, he's crazy, but like you don't need to be mean to him. But basically the Malazans and Brood talk to Krupp and they speak with him, and Brood calls for all of them to convene and like discuss everything in the tent. And this is where we also get like Crone shows up as well, and Krupp starts messing with Crone, just like everyone else, and like confusing the hell out of Crone with the way he talks. Let me check the chat here. You, sir, should have been a great raven, and you a dog. Yeah. He shouts back. Crone halted, teetered a moment, wings half spreading. She cocked her head. Was a dog? This is a callback to when Crone disguised herself as a dog with Brook. Oh yeah, I didn't even think about that callback. But like it confused like Crone. She's like, what is going on with this dude? Like, see, I like Krupp because even though he's like crazy per se, like Iskra Pust is like crazy in a different way. Krupp is like crazy but like fun. You still understand what he's saying and people still like know what he's saying. Where like Pust is just like crazy. You're just like, what the hell did he say? Like, and you don't understand it. Like, I feel like that's the main difference. Is like Krupp you can still understand. Pust is just like, I don't get you. And Krupp is still like they're both competent in different ways. And so we cut to like when everyone's discussing everything, and they're all discussing like the river, the bridge being collapsed, the difficulties because of this bridge being collapsed. Krupp then chimes in again, and he basically brings up the trade guild that shows up in Deadhouse Gates and how they could be of use. Cole continues to be like annoying, and he's like, "You're here for the trade guild, not Baruch. What are you talking for? You're not part of the council." Like he's being really annoying to him. We then cut to the next section, and Crone's like outside, and she senses sorcery going on, and so she goes to seek it out. She stumbles upon Spindle, Hedge, Blend, and Picker, and they're at the table playing with the deck of dragons. They're talking about a new card and hearing the news of a new card worries Crone. So she basically peeks in to see what this card is that they're talking about, and under the table she sees like eyes that look alive. During this, like they also like mention like Callum and the whirlwind and stuff like that. So they're just like talking about like how that's shown in the deck of dragons while they're like there. And then the next section after this, Perrin asks Maib for directions, and she walks with him to the shrouded tents that Crone was just at. On the way to the tents, she basically tells him that she believes Tattersall is the dominant force in Silver Fox. And when they reach the tent, Crone pops out, and she just like looks at Perrin, and she just like yells at him. She's like, "You!" And then she like flies away, and Perrin's like, "What the hell was that?" Like, okay. And then the bridge burners like come out of the tent as well, and like Perrin's like, "What are you guys doing here? What's going on? I'm your captain, blah blah blah." And he learns about the table, and he's like, "You guys need to return the table." Like, and then when they finally like it clicks in their head as well when they see like the new card and they see Perrin, they're like, "Oh, Perrin is the new card. That's him." And it like clicks in their head. They don't mention it to Perrin, but they're like, "Oh crap." And so I believe it's like Spindle at the moment. It's like, I need to talk to like Quick Ben or Whiskey. Like, get the hell out of here. Like, what's going on? But Perrin's like, go return the table, basically, like a bunch of idiots. Let me check the chat real quick. What is all this? Cole hissed dangerously. Baruch doesn't even know you're here. A minor breakdown in communication, nothing more. That's what I mean. See, Krupp's actually like funny. Pust is just crazy. Krupp is like funny because he toys with people. Like, it's just a minor communication breakdown. I know what he wants. Don't worry about it. Perrin, after this, runs into Whiskey Jack, and he gets his new orders, how he's supposed to go with the bridge burners and the Maranth to these like white-faced Barghast, I believe, and convince them to fight in Capuzon, basically, and then go back south to help them support Capuzon. So they're trying to get new allies. After the orders, we see Rake flies in his dragon form. And he basically wakes up everyone in the camp with like the rush of wind and everything. And they're like, "What's going on? What was that?" And so basically everyone's going back to like another parlay. So Whiskey Jack goes to the tent with Brood and company and asks Perrin if he would like to say goodbye to Silver Fox as well. And Perrin says no, he doesn't want to see Silver Fox again because he's still distraught from what happened before. So that was a little interesting part that was thrown in there. with that, we then cut to the next section. Rake is here, and basically, there's immediate tension between Rake and everyone else. He's told of Silver Fox, and he like doesn't know what to think about her just yet. And like Calor is like the first one to tell him stuff, and so he kind of like sides with Calor momentarily, before knowing any better. And he like sends like magic towards Silver Fox to like sense what she is, and she repels the magic, and he gets on edge, and he like pulls out his sword, and he's like ready to do anything, and then Brood's like, nope, you're not doing that. He like pulls out his hammer, and they're like in a Mexican standoff basically, in this moment. And while this is happening, um like this part was like crazy. While this is all happening, uh stupid Krupp just like comes flying in holding onto like the table randomly, and he's just like, help. I'm stuck on the table, and he's just like hanging onto it while it's floating in air, and then everyone's just like, what the hell is going on? What is that? And then we cut like to a small section, and we see Perrin's like walking with the rest of the bridge burner, and then he gets like randomly snatched up, and then he's like teleported beneath the table where Krupp is like still holding on. And then he like looks up, and he sees his face under the table. um and during this, like, Silver Fox then breaks the legs of the table, Krupp falls, and Quickbend then shows up and recommends like a momentary truce while Perrin is like writhing in pain under the table basically. So Wraith sheaths his sword, Perrin's like writhing in pain, and then we cut to Perrin's soul being teleported to the dead house in Daru, essentially. Let me check on the chat real quick. Rake-eyed Calor, it seems you stand alone. It was ever thus. I am not unfamiliar with that position, High King. Yep, because he left them when they were in a group, or whatever. When they were with Osric, which we still don't know who Osric is fully. But we get some really cool stuff with Perrin here in the dead house, where we kind of learn like the situation and the ramifications. I feel like these are the ramifications for not just this book, but like probably the whole series. Considering like the 10th book is called Crippled God, I'm assuming this is like the big overarching story of the series, which is crazy to get like what the series is about in book 3, like the like not big bad, but like the ramifications. Yeah, I think the soul goes to the one in Darujistan. Yeah, he goes to the one. It's the one in Daru. And so his soul's teleported to the dead house in Daru, and he sees Ralik, Nam, and Vorkin are asleep on the floor. So they were injured when they entered, and they fell asleep, and they've been basically stuck in that stasis, just like how that one lady we saw in the dead house in the other Azeth was asleep as well. So I guess if they don't accept your ascendancy when you're injured, you're just like in eternal sleep or something. We don't know exactly what's going on with that yet. I wonder if they take them out of the house, if they'll wake up though. That's something we'll have to see. I'll be honest, I had no idea what the end goal was until like book 9. Yeah, I don't know the end goal exactly. I just feel like these are like, it feels like these are major ramifications of burn that are being set up here. But we'll see. It could totally change by the end of the book. For that, it could be more than like that could change at the end of this book, and then like I don't know what the ramifications are for the series as a whole. We'll see. But after he sees Ralik, Nam, and everything, he then is greeted by Raced of all people. And Raced is calm and collected and like affable for some reason. And we're just like, what? Didn't you just want to like murder everyone a second ago? So we learned like Race was absorbed by the Azeth, and he's now bound to be its guardian. Race takes Perrin down below and sends him like on an awakening journey of sorts. As I mentioned before, there's a lot of like linking between the Azeth and the Jaghut, with Ikram's father being in the dead house, Ikram dead house in Malaz City, and then we have Raced being the Jaghut in Daru, and then the dead house in the Whirlwind was supposed to be Ikram, but they never like submitted, and Mappo never let the Azeth take him. But I feel like there's some type of connection with the Jaghut and the dead houses that we just don't know of yet. But anyways, Perrin's going on this like awakening journey, so his soul's teleported into like a new world that he doesn't know of. It's like full of like skulls and bones. And he recognizes it from one of the cards, but he can't quite place where he's at. Um, but what he knows from the card is that it's like a place where the Talani Moss were before the ritual, where they became immortal. And while he's there, he encounters Byrne sleeping and sees that she's chained to the crippled god essentially, and that she's being poisoned by the crippled god. This is where he realizes that Brood was given the hammer so that he could break everything, but after receiving it, he defied Byrne and he didn't listen to Byrne. And so he then comes back to Raced after all this like revelation, and he basically tells him he wants to leave. He doesn't want to be here anymore. He's already struggling with learning everything he learned prior and learning all these things now. He just doesn't know how to handle it. And then with the same sense, we'll talk about the Kaladin Brood stuff later when we get to his conversation with Rake as well. Walk into the darkness, and if I refuse, then I kill you. Unforgiving bastard, this Azeth, Perrin muttered. I'll kill you, not for the Azeth, but for the wasted effort of this journey, mortal. You've no sense of humor. Yeah, Race actually is like making jokes. It's so weird getting Race like making jokes and being calm, because all we know him as before is being the Jakku tyrant who's trying to kill everyone and murder everyone. So pretty interesting. Perrin ends up back in his body though, and everyone's like calmed down. And they've come to like sort of an agreement on how to handle the outcome of Silver Fox, if it's Tattersall or not. During this, the table is still stuck in the air, and Quickbend says that he'll take care of it. And Rake just like looks at him like, "Oh, you're more than meets the eye. You're not just a mere soldier like you said you were before. If you're able to take care of this table from like floating randomly." We then cut to Maib, who ran off, and she's breaking down because of the situation. She's depressed. She's crying. She wants to kill herself essentially. And she's begging Crone to help her die, and Crone's like, no, I'm not going to help you kill yourself. Corlott then finds her, and she's like, the Tistiandi will take care of you from now on. And she takes her under her wing and is taking care of her. She basically gives up on her death wish momentarily, because she doesn't really have a choice, because people aren't going to let her kill herself. Do you see me, Crone? Do you truly see me? The Maid pushed herself to her hands and knees, then sat back and glared up at the great raven. I'm not but dried brittle spirits below each moment of this life, this terrible existence, and I edged closer to her head drooped, to hatred. She finished in a ragged whisper. A sob racked her. Yeah, it's pretty crazy, her story, too, because, like, you think she's supposed to love Silver Fox, but it's, like, looked at as, like, a parasite, in a way. It's like, what if you gave birth to like the Antichrist, is the way that she's looking at it. She's like, I was a vessel to give birth. Sort of like if we're doing a comparison to Christianity, like Mary, because she never like mated with anyone. But she gave birth to like someone who's leeching her life force. And so she sees her as like a parasite in a way, not as her daughter like she should, for that, because of everything that's happening. So it's an interesting dynamic. So we cut to the next section though. So we get, this is the Rake and Brood discussion where they're talking about the ramifications of Byrne's situation. From what I understood, if he breaks the cripple god, he will die along with Byrne. But if he doesn't, Byrne will die eventually, and all sorcery will cease to exist, and everyone will die anyways. So that's why I was like, are these the stakes for the series? Because, like, so if he kills Byrne, or not Byrne, like, if he uses the hammer, he's going to die, which is why he hasn't used the hammer. But if he doesn't, everyone else is going to die. And even if he uses it and breaks the cripple god, his, like, body is still going to spread, and people are still going to suffer. So he's like, no matter what, things are fucked, basically. And so he's just like delaying the inevitable by not breaking anything, and he doesn't know what to do. If Byrne dies from the crippled god's poison, the poison was spread to all other warrens and kill sorcery. Not shattering his chains would only delay the inevitable. Okay, not shattering his chains would delay the inevitable. Yeah, so they're screwed no matter what, basically. They have to find a way to heal Byrne, and like at the same time defeat the crippled god. Because like if they just shatter the chains, then like I don't know, it's like confusing. Like no matter what, they're screwed. um, Let me cut back. Even easier. Quick Ben replied to make a hole in the ground. Oh yeah, yeah. That's in the next section, I think. Yeah, that's the next section. But those are like what I mentioned with the ramifications with like the series. I don't know if it's gonna be serious. This could get resolved in this book. Who's to say? I don't know yet. But like it's interesting to see what's happening. And I'm just like, okay, so the whole world can end essentially based on Brood's decision. So that's the weight he's carrying on his shoulders. So we cut to the next section. Perrin, Whiskey, Quicksilver, Silver, Silver Fox, and Calor. They're all like at the table still. Um, Perrin basically says he has to like he doesn't have the answers to everyone's questions. Whiskey Jack suggests that they take the table with them. They're just gonna like carry it on a chain like a balloon, is what I imagine. Because I don't know if they could get it out of the sky, so they're gonna like carry it like a balloon, is what I was imagining. Um, Silver Fox then says that it will stay with the Rivi people and with Perrin because he has need of it. Calor then approaches and threatens Quick Ben. He's like, this was interesting. He's like, he called him a collector of souls. He's like, what I do is destroy souls, and you're a collector of souls. I can destroy you. And Quick Ben's like, I don't like this guy. Bam. Hole in the ground. Run away. Get me out of here. Like some Looney Tunes kind of stuff. Yeah, like you put in the chat, like even easier, Quick Ben replied. To make a hole in the ground, Calor dropped from sight. The earth was gone beneath him, armor cladded, followed by a bellow of rage. Yeah, so he like Looney Tunes him and he like dropped him in a hole and he's like, I'm out of here, bro. Like, we're good. um, but yeah. And then everyone basically after this departs for their mission. So like Perrin and the Bridge Burners are going to the Whiteface Bargas to ally with them, and then everyone else is going to Capuzon at the moment. We then cut to the next section where Quick Ben is talking to Whiskey Jack, and Quick basically, um, Whiskey Jack can tell that Quick Ben's on edge, and he lets him know that he needs him for about a week before he can like escape. And Quick Ben also tells him of like the empty Ruby Barrows, which he's been like meeting with and or like exploring, and like this is where we get like the desperation of Quick Ben trying to find like a cure for the situation. He's just going crazy at this point because he's just like, I don't know what to do. Okay. And then that's the end of chapter 5. And then we go to chapter 6, which is the last chapter here. We only have one point of view with this chapter, and this is like the storyline where I was like, I don't really know about this until this chapter. This chapter was pretty good for what it gave. It was interesting. We finally get introduction to like the dinosaur raptors with like blades, is essentially what it sounded like bone dinosaurs with like blades on them that are just like murdering people. I'm like, that's pretty gruesome. Okay. um but let's go to the beginning. So we go to Gruntle and the rest of the squad. They reach a town called like Saltone, and they're greeted by Nectara and two others that are claiming to be their escort. Gruntle then talks to Caruli, and Caruli confirms that like, yeah, they're our escort. I'm meeting with the real rulers of Saltane, not the like kings, but like the underground rulers, basically, who actually run the city. Um, from there, we get to the meeting with Caruli and the rest of them. Caruli is basically convincing all the rulers of Saltane to fight the Panion domain, but like do it in a different way. So like do it with politics, talking, intrigue, words, and not through like physical force, because no one's been able to beat them through physical force. We need to do it in a different way with subterfuge and like maneuvering. And so the rest of the group, we go back to Gruntle and the rest of the group. They're talking at the inn and they're waiting for Caruli to finish his meeting. It ends. Caruli comes in and he basically says that he convinced them for the most part. The next stop is Capuzin for the group, and for reasons Gruntle rather not ask about. There's like a mystery around Caruli, and he's like afraid to ask because of the mystery. He's like, I'm not gonna like pry into that. I just want to like kind of finish this contract and move on, like kind of thing. Um, After then, we then cut to the next section where the group's leaving the area. They're going on the trail, and they're taking turns scouting ahead. Stani returns. Um, when they talk to Curly about this, Curly insists on inviting the Barghast into their group because it's better to have them close by and watching them than to have them far away and be worried about them, essentially. And so they greet the Barghast, they invite them in. We get introduced to Heaton and her brothers, which are Kafel and I have really bad handwriting. It starts with an N, Natal, Kafal and Natak, something like that. I have bad handwriting. I can't even read it. Um, but we get introduced to the Barghast, and they decide to go along with them. And during this, they also mention that they're like hunting demons that have hollowed eyes and blades for arms and talons for feet, which we get introduced to later, which are basically like raptors with blade arms. And I'm like, okay, that's intense. I'm like, this is like the dinosaurs people were talking about in Malazan. And so after that, we cut to the next section. Gruntle, Heaton discuss the demons, which are like the dinosaur things that we see later. She mentions that her people were sent to hunt them, and that their like war chief saw them in a dream, and their job is to go and kill them now. She also mentions that they have no interest in a war with helping Katputsen or in a war with Katputsen, despite the Panyan Domin. Whenever the Panyan Domin comes to the Barghast land is when they'll like take care of them, but until then they have no interest in being involved prior, unless they have to be. So knowing that, it's going to be interesting when the negotiations come with Perrin and all them. So we'll see what happens. Heaton also tells us her favorite thing, which is killing and riding men. And so I was like, okay, good for you, Heaton. Good for you. We get to the next section though. The group's continuing traveling. And basically, oh yeah, and then she like takes Gruntle and has sex with him and rides him because that's her favorite thing is just riding men. And she's like, Harlow, I'll get you tomorrow. um, the group then continues on. They're traveling and they stumble upon a bunch of like carnage, destruction, fire, like trees have been exploded. And then they see like in the distance that a carriage is toppled over and it's Botchelane's carriage, and Emanciport Reese and Broach's carriage, Buke, all of them, that whole group. It's like toppled over, destroyed, and they're just like, what happened here? It's also like at a barrow as well. And so the Barghast are like pissed off because the barrow's been like destroyed, and like ravaged. And then Gruntle in the meanwhile is like trying to investigate the area to like see what's going on. He goes up to the carriage and he like looks in it and there's two chests that are like taken out and he sees like the chests are just like full of like body parts, organs, bones, and like things like that. And he's like, oh, these people are crazier than I thought. And he starts to suspect like necromancy and things of that sort, which is fine to suspect. And then he gets out of the carriage and there's like four figures approaching from the distance. It's Buke, Botchelane, Broach, and Reese. They tell him that they were attacked by three creatures, and they were able to like handle one of them, and then they had to retreat from the other two, which is why they're not at their carriage. Because of the attack, and what happened to the barrow, the Barghast are pissed off at them. They go back to Curly to talk about everything, and they basically have no choice but to partner up with Botchelane and Broach because like if they don't, they're going to be killed by the creatures if they don't partner up with them. So they partner up with them, and since they're all on their way to Katputsan, and Buke then warns, like, Buke is talking to Gruntle, and he's like, Gruntle's like, bro, you need to, like, leave this contract before you get killed. Like, they're gonna kill you, and Buke has a death wish. He wants to die. He's like, I don't know if we'll survive until dawn. We're being destroyed, blah, blah, blah. He's just, like, very depressed, and he's like, bro, Stani likes you. Why don't you go with Stani? He's like, I don't care. I want to die, blah, blah, blah. Like, he just wants, he's just a depressed little boy. So we cut to the next section. Oh, yeah, and this is where I was my theory. I'm like, I think the cat is a soul taken. The cat, like, runs away at this point, but I don't know yet. Let me see this quote here. Oh, that's sweet. Get one of your few remaining friends to kill you. Seems I was wrong. It's not just self-pity, is it? You're not obsessed with the tragic deaths of your family. You're obsessed with your self-buke. Your guilt's an endlessly rising tide, and that ego of yours is a levee, and all you do is keep slapping fresh bricks on it. The wall gets higher and higher, and you're looking down on the world from a lofty height, with a hood damn sneer. Yep. So he's like, he keeps trying to say it's like because of his family and stuff, but I don't. He's just like in straight up depression. He just wants to like kill himself, or he has a death wish because he's not gonna actually do it. He's a coward. He wants other people to kill him. Um, so we get to that conversation between both of them, and then the sun's going down, so we all decide to camp. While they're camping, Harlow and Heaton go off, and then Stani is like, "Yo, Buke, come with me," and he's like, "No." He turns her down, and she's like, "Asshole," and then she like goes to like one of the Bargas guys, and she's like, "You come with me," like the youngest one. And then while they're going off having their fun, a trap goes off, and then the creatures are basically coming. Sabachele and Abroach are like, "Here's a light that like shows out like 30 meters and uh brightens the area so they can fight." From this point, the Bargas like start using their wards and everything. We go to Karuli, and he mentions that he has like he can summon his god sort of, but he doesn't know what the ramifications are since it's an elder god. So we learn that like he's a priest for an elder god. Maybe Cruel. I don't know. We'll see. Because I'm trying to think what other elder gods we know. And then like the whole fight ensues. Like the Bargas are handling their side pretty well, and then Karuli gets attacked by one of the raptors. And then while he's being attacked, Gruntle goes to save him, gets injured, and then Stani saves Gruntle or Buke. No, wait. Harlow, one of them, one of the other ones saves him, and then he gets like carried off and like stabbed with the talons, and it's pretty brutal. He's just like being like ripped apart, carried off, and like we're watching him like slowly die and like his vision fade out, and then Gruntle dies, and that ends the book. And I'm like, well, since we were getting to this point of view for the whole thing, so good on you, Erickson. That was smart, but I was just like, ooh, okay, you got me interested though. Like we got these necromancers that are like we don't know what's going on with them. We got freaking raptors, like blade raptors, trying to kill everyone. We got an elder god priest. Like we got a bunch of Bargas. Like there's a lot of interesting things happening here. Let me come back to the chat. Yeah, so that ends book one basically. Yeah, a good starting book. I'm liking the beginning of Memories of Ice more than Deadhouse Gates for sure so far. Gardens of the Moon I think has a really good book one, so I don't. They're about on par at the moment. Because there hasn't like I feel like more happens in book one of Gardens of the Moon with like Sorry and like the fight with Rake and everything. There's a lot of things that happen in book one of Gardens of the Moon for like the first sub book. But I really like Memories of Ice so far. We'll see where it goes, but it's a great start. The only complaint I really had was like the beginning of the storyline with like Gruntle, but by the end I was like all for it and him dying and like all the intrigue and build up. But I like all the storylines. I really like the Talk storyline for the intrigue and the possible connection with the Beast that we saw in the beginning. I'm interested to see what happens with Talk's character going forward, and Envy and like this unique group of individuals that are together. Perrin, one of my favorite characters from Gardens of the Moon. I like his storyline so far as well. Like this is all just continuing in a really good way. I'm excited to see what it does going forward, but it's a great setup sub book to begin the book, basically the spark and the ashes. So the spark to start the fire, the ashes are the aftermath. Could also refer spark and ashes to Calor, I guess, since he like burned everything, but I don't know. But this book is like the spark for Memories of Ice in the way I'm seeing. Yeah, first half of Memories of Ice is mostly set up. It's a lot of information really. The endings are satisfying, it's fine, but I'm excited because I know there's emotional parts in this book that we're gonna get to because everyone talks about like crying in Memories of Ice. Like even like some of the spoiler-free reviews I've seen on YouTube, like people are like breaking down. Like I've seen like some reading vlogs where people that read it, they don't spoil it, but they're like crying about. I know there's like sad things that are gonna happen, And I'm just like, I don't know if I'm ready for it, but we'll see. But yeah, I'm excited for book two. What is it called? Let's see. I think it's Hearthstone, like the game. Yeah, Hearthstone. So we're gonna go into Hearthstone next week. It's about another 200 pages, um, like this one was. But I'm excited to see what's gonna go on. I don't really have any predictions. Trying to think like any predictions. Like I don't know. The thing with Malazan is like usually when questions come up, he usually answers them at the end of the chapter. I feel like for the most part, there's like stuff that like we have no clue about, which I can't really predict at all. Um, that are like still the remaining big questions, but a lot of the like stuff like gets answered later in the chapter. So like in the beginning when I'm like, oh, what if Draconis is the one that made Dragnipur and stuff, and then it's later confirmed at a later point. He's like, yeah, he made Dragnipur. You'll get there when you get there. So very few people don't like it a lot. Yeah, no, I'm liking it so far. I know a lot of people online were like saying like with Malazan, really got to read like the first three books. And if you don't like the first three books, then it's like then you might want to drop the series, but really give the first three books a try before you decide if you want to drop it or not. I've already like kind of committed to doing the whole thing. I mean, I like it enough to continue. But I'm really excited going forward. But yeah, any questions or anything you guys have before we call it for today? Um, I mean, it'll be interesting to do the character tier list after this book. I'm gonna have to like bring up the old ones and like have them like the rankings before, see who moved up and down and everything. If I remember correctly, I ranked the highest. They ranked the highest on subreddit's ranking poll. Yeah, I know it's a lot of people's favorites, or like it's up there, from what I've seen, for that. But I'm excited though. I'm excited to see what happens. But other than that though, thank you guys for joining me. Oh, let me see. It was the highest, but not the highest in terms of the amount of people having it first. Okay, so it had like the most votes, but not necessarily like the most people having it first. Toll Hounds had more at number one. Got it. Okay, but it had the most points like total. Okay, that makes sense. Okay, I'm excited though. It's gonna be fun. Other than that though, thank you all for watching. Hope you have a good rest of your day. I'll see you guys next week. Hope you have a good week of reading, good week of everything in general. But I'm excited, and I'll see you guys later. Bye bye.